Welcome to the Steering Change Podcast, navigating through the commercial transportation industry in Alberta and beyond, powered by the Alberta Motor Transport Association. Here's your host, Kelsey Hipkin.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to today's episode. We have two segments for you on today's episode, and I did want to mention our second segment, Sitting Down with TAT or Truckers Against Trafficking, does include a trigger warning of sexual assault and bodily harm. For the first part of today's episode, I was at AMTA's Lethbridge Safety Summit back in May and noticed whenever our next guest and or her colleagues present, they get a lot of questions as follow-up. So I thought, why not pose the question to the world? We sent out on our AMTA socials and my AMTA portal and asked you, our members, our listeners, the public in general, about questions for WCB Alberta, and you delivered. We have a few questions to get through today and just the lady to do it. I am joined by past Steering Change guest Deborah Nilsen, industry specialist with WCB Alberta. Deb has more than 20 years' experience working with injured workers' claims and employer accounts, and she works with trucking, utilities, hospitality, and healthcare industries. Deb, hello and welcome back.
Hello, how are you?
I am doing well, thank you. To start, let's do a quick recap of getting to know you. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Well, as an industry specialist, we work with employers, and I always say we work in a consulting role. So we know the claim side of the business, we know the account side of the business, we don't make any decisions. So we guide and direct employers on how to do disability management, but then also any questions that they might have in regards to their account.
Thank you so much, Deb. I appreciate you taking the time today. So let's dive in with these questions that we received. I'm going to start with, what are examples of modified duties? Can the company be specifically dependent on their operations?
Modified duties should be tailored to the worker's current abilities and skill set, as well as the company's operational needs.
Okay.
So WCB is recommending that you maintain a list of modified duty options to accommodate various types of injuries, such as upper body, lower body, or back injuries. So the modified work that you're going to provide can vary depending on the injury. Having a list to help establish the modified duties for the next schedule shift, prevent the lost time, can definitely be a proactive approach for an employer. So initially, you're going to want to have a list that anyone could potentially do depending on the different body parts that could be injured. But then you should be developing a more specific plan based on the worker's skills, their education, their interests, as well as the company needs. So modified duties should be temporary and assisting that worker transition back to their regular duties. But with more severe injuries, you might need to be a little bit more creative. Some of the ideas that we have for trucking: answering phones, assisting in dispatch, cross-training, mentoring others, taking courses through the AMTA. That can also work with, even developing different safety moments for your staff. Go to the AMTA website, look at the different resources they have, and can the worker not spend some time looking through all the different resources there? Could they inspect and clean trucks and trailers, organizing the dock, performing a magnet sweep of the yard, checking straps and tires, providing different routes, loads, or trucks to accommodate restrictions, and possibly looking at developing safety moments for your staff? The AMTA has a library of safety moments that maybe your worker can spend some time going through them and establishing a plan for your safety meetings and what's going to be discussed at those safety meetings and utilizing those great resources.
Awesome. Thank you, Deb. And especially thank you for mentioning the AMTA website. That is amta.ca, friends. And those microlearns that Deb mentioned, as we have a number of them on psychosocial, musculoskeletal, and slips, trips, and falls. So there's definitely a range of videos that you guys can check out there. So Deb, moving on to our next question, what can a company do to pay less in WCB premiums?
The number one strategy is safety. Employers' most valuable resource are their employees. So it is so important to invest in safety to prevent injuries from occurring. This is where the AMTA comes into place. On the other side of it, though, is having a strong disability management and modified work plan for when injuries occur. So knowing what to do when an injury occurs is important. Obviously, you need to provide first aid as well as transportation to first medical. Review options and offer modified duties based on the medical abilities. And then report into the WCB within 72 hours to ensure treatment approval and initiation. For large employers, claims costs impact premiums. Employers can control compensation costs by providing modified duties as soon as the worker is capable to return to these duties. If the worker does not miss time from work and the medical costs on the claim are under the WCB threshold amount of $2,000 for 2025, the claim will not be experience rated and will not impact premiums.
Oh.
That's key. That is kind of the trick of the trade. Some resources that I recommend for employers, we do have a return to work seminar that is available virtually at no cost. Check out the WCB website at wcb.ab.ca. And then the other is a disability management toolkit, which is on the main page for the MyWCB portal, as well as the employer app. And that can help employers walk through the different steps that are required when an injury occurs.
Awesome. Thank you. And for our listeners, we are going to make sure to include all of these links in the show notes as well. So you can access them from the site that Deb mentioned or in the show notes too. So moving on to the next one, how can an employer dispute/protect themselves if they disagree with the outcome of a claim?
If an employer disagrees with the outcome of a claim, the first step is to discuss the decision with the WCB decision maker, so either the adjudicator or a case manager. Understanding the basis of the decision, which is grounded in the Workers' Compensation Act legislation and policies, is crucial. This decision ensures that all relevant information has been considered. If unresolved, the next step would be to discuss it with the claim owner's supervisor. At this point, if there is no resolution, then you can submit a request for review form. You have 1 year from the date of the decision to complete this request, and it will be reviewed by the WCB's Dispute Resolution and Decision Review Body. If the decision is still upheld, then the employer has 1 year to request an appeal through the Appeals Commission. There are resources for you as an employer, though. We do have an employer appeal consultation service where an industry specialist like myself will review the issue, assist you with understanding the decision, the legislation, and provide you advice on how to proceed or present your position. We also have a virtual employer appeals seminar that is available on our website, and that helps to walk you through the process and the different steps. And then there is also an advisor's office that provides independent advice, assistance, and advocacy for employers at no charge. And we'll include that website in the speaker notes.
Perfect. Thank you. And for the next one, what training on the job opportunities do employers have to work with?
Employers have two options to support workers with permanent work restrictions who cannot return to their original positions. Providing an accommodation, their own worker, or hiring externally. So when you're accommodating your own worker, we refer to that as a work assessment program. This assists a worker in transitioning to new roles within your company. So what WCB will do is we will help identify suitable opportunities, we'll assist with developing a training plan, and then provide any external training, job coaching, or ergonomic assessments. What is included is a wage subsidy for training wages that you pay that we provide on a declining scale. So WCB will reimburse a percentage of the salary that you pay a worker while they learn the new job within your organization. The percentage of reimbursement and duration are easily negotiable with the WCB. One example that we do utilize, though, is that the WCB, we would be looking at a 6-month period of time for them to develop the skills for this new position. The first 2 months, we will reimburse 100% of the wages that you pay out. The third and fourth month, it decreases to 50%, and then the 6th month would be 25%. We are anticipating that the worker is going to be gaining skills throughout that period of time and require less training on the job. Thus, the subsidy is on a decreasing scale. Great thing about this is you get to retain your experienced staff in a permanent position that fits their restriction. Now, we also have training on the job, which is very similar, but this is if you are hiring an external individual. So this injured worker was not injured in the course of employment with you, but they have permanent work restrictions, and now they are seeking a new career. With this, the WCB will pre-screen employees and determine who would be a good fit, who have the abilities that you require for the position you're hiring for, and that they are safe to do the job. Along with the wage subsidy that I just discussed, you will also have protection for your company for re-injury and or injury for the duration of that training on the job period. Oh. So what this means is that if you have let's say a similar 6-month contract as I had mentioned, for that 6 months, if this worker that you hire through this program aggravates their compensable condition, it will not be a claim for your company. Oh. Also, if your worker experiences a new injury from an employment hazard with your company, we will also not put that claim onto your company. So if they trip coming into the office and fall and hurt their knee, that would not be a claim against your company for that 6-month period of time. Now, there are some restrictions with this, especially if the hiring company does not have a WCB account or if the worker is working outside of the Alberta jurisdiction. But even still, with this program, Training on the Job, as an hiring employer, you have full control over who you hire. You get the wage subsidy and protection of injury for a period of time. And if it is determined that this worker is not a good candidate, there is no obligation to keep the worker. So you're not tied into any contract or anything along that lines that you will have challenges with, right? Any experience that this worker is going to get through your company is always going to be a benefit. So definitely something to keep in mind if you're hiring for a lighter physically demanding job. And please don't discount the workers over the age of 50. They have normally years and years of experience in the trucking industry and can certainly be an asset to your company. Some of the positions that we're looking at or that have been filled with the training on the job: dispatch, driving, some alternate driving duties, office administration positions, safety. And don't forget, once again, AMTA plug here about the AMTA's Certified Transportation Safety Professional or Safety Coordinator delegations. Maybe those would be great roles for your company, especially as you grow and expand. We can help your company with hiring someone in that position by providing those designations to a worker that you would be interested in hiring under the training on the job, as well as, once again, that subsidy and protection from lawsuits. So win-win.
And I mean, I can speak from an AMTA perspective as well, because I believe it is 2 hires through that program. And the department they're in, they're thriving, obviously, but also just the experience they bring from being in industry itself. So I can definitely give that one a shout out on our regard. So Deb, the next one, it's a bit involved, so bear with me here. What should I do if one of my employees is involved in a motor vehicle accident or an incident caused by someone else's negligence? Is cost relief available, and how can I ensure I receive it? Additionally, if I have an employee who previously sustained a workplace injury and that injury is aggravated while working for my company, am I responsible for that claim, or does the liability revert to the original employer where the injury first occurred?
Okay. Let's start with the motor vehicle accidents. So if an employee is involved in a motor vehicle accident or an incident caused by someone else's negligence, the first thing that you want to do is ensure your worker is taken to medical accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
When you submit your employer report of injury, you will also want to include the automobile accident report into the claim. This will trigger a task for our legal department to review the claim for third-party action. If the third party was in the course of employment, you can apply to transfer your claims costs to the negligent employer's WCB account. You will need to provide supporting evidence of negligence, but we will include the form that you would need to complete in the speaker notes for this podcast. For accidents where the negligent party was not in the course of employment, WCB will initiate a third-party recovery, so a lawsuit to the third party, to recover the costs and then remove them from your premium calculation. Now, legal action can take years and years and years before it is finalized, and what we provide to an employer is early cost relief request. So that is actually an email into our legal department just requesting that they review for an opportunity to apply early cost relief, which will then remove the costs prior to them impacting your premiums. There is a delay, though, getting a claim costs for the claims cost to show up on your premiums. So a 2025 claim will not impact premiums till 2027. So there definitely is some time. They do need to initiate. They need to be able to determine that there is a strong chance that they will be able to recover the costs in the third-party recovery. But if you were to see one and you're like, hey, that was a motor vehicle accident, and it's now impacting my premiums, you can feel free to reach out to rather myself or my counterpart, Leanne Mraz, and we will help guide you through it, or reach out to our legal department, because by that time you should have gotten a notification from them confirming whether or not the other party was in the course of employment.
Awesome. And
now,
okay,
the second half of the question, sorry about that. So that one was in regards to if an employee's previous workplace injury is aggravated while working for your company. You still need to submit an employer report of injury within 72 hours of being made aware that this worker is having challenges. It is up to the WCB to adjudicate, and I'll walk you through what we're going to be looking at here. Also recommend strongly that you do provide modified duties based on the medical abilities, because at this point in the game, you just know you have a worker who's having challenges. You don't know where the liability lies. So provide modified duties and move forward as if this is your injured worker. What the adjudicator will be investigating is if there was a work hazard that occurred at a time and place consistent with the obligations and expectations of your employment. So was there a mechanism of injury related to your work duties? So if the worker lifted something heavy at work and aggravated a prior back injury, whether that prior injury was work-related or not, that does not matter. But the mechanism of lifting something heavy at work, it likely would be that we would accept the back injury. If the recovery period is delayed as a result of an aggravation of a pre-existing condition, the employer could be eligible for some cost relief for the costs related to the delay in recovery. Okay. Now, this option is currently not available in the specialized trucking industry because they are in industry custom pricing for cost relief.
Okay.
But keep in mind that we do repoll the industry custom pricing, and this could change. And there is a repolling for this industry for 2025. So just keep that in mind. Now, if the employee's prior injury is aggravated without a specific injury at work, an incident at work, it may be reviewed under a prior claim. So it could be just that the worker is now developing arthritic changes, or they require some hardware, surgical hardware, to be removed. If it is determined that with or without the duties they're doing with you, this pre-existing injury would have flared up, then we should be looking at reopening the prior claim. And if that prior claim is reopened, it will not impact you.
Okay, so similar but different. Let's move over to a bit of a psychosocial related question. If I have an employee dealing with a workplace-related psychological injury and they've been waiting months to see a psychologist due to lack of availability, is cost relief available when these delays are beyond the control of the employer, employee, or WCB?
Cost relief is not available for these delays. However, WCB has implemented measures to ensure timely access to psychological support. So WCB maintains a roster of counselors for workers with psychological injuries. Currently, we are seeing a wait time of less than 2 to 3 weeks. We have definitely been growing that roster over the years. There are also virtual appointments that we have available to assist workers who are in remote areas. Now, there can be delays while we wait for a comprehensive psychological assessment, which is an assessment that we're normally utilizing to determine whether we're accepting a chronic onset psychological injury claim. Sometimes there could be a delay getting into a treatment program that we have for psychological injuries. But what we're doing as we're waiting and possibly having delays for those situations is we are continuing to provide community counseling sessions to support the worker.
Great.
For employers, I do strongly recommend, we do have a seminar on psychological injuries in the workplace that actually goes over what do we look at accepting, what do we look at for treatment, for recovery, and the employer's role. We definitely love having modified duties or a pre-negotiated offer for modified duties for our psychological injury claims. And then what we're also really focusing on is ensuring that we have a cognitive psychosocial job and demands analysis. And this is going to help the WCB and treatment providers understand the requirements and barriers to a safe and early return to work. So we do need that information from employers. And if you are interested in learning how to complete those, there is a workshop available through the Millard Health Center, and we'll make sure that the link is included.
Wonderful. Okay, Deb, we are at our final question. This one is extensive. I'll read it in full, and then if you ever want to go back to any of it, we can absolutely break that down too. Okay. I have an employee who was injured and is now being considered for modified duties. Their functional abilities form, FAF, completed by their doctor, indicates they are fit for modified work and can drive commercially for a limited amount of time. However, the form also lists climbing as a restriction. The employee is now saying they cannot climb into the truck, which effectively rules out commercial driving. In trucking, getting in and out of the cab does involve a motion similar to climbing a ladder. It's likely the doctor meant to restrict climbing in the context of ladders, not truck entry, but the form is not specific. How do we proceed in clarifying this? Is it appropriate to go back to the treating physician for a more detailed guidance on what type of climbing is restricted? And if so, is there a specific form or process we should follow to ensure this is done correctly and exponentially so we can determine if modified work is still a viable option?
Okay. So when dealing with climbing restrictions, some of the following is going to be essential for us to know. So please, as an employer, provide us the physical demands analysis to understand how many times a worker must get in and out of the truck trailer in a shift. With this information, the WCB can go back to the treatment provider and inquire further about the climbing restriction. Can you, as the employer, limit the number of times that they have to get in and out of the truck trailer by providing a swamper or changing the route or the load? If the restriction is related to an arm injury, ensure that you let WCB know if you have grab handles on both sides of the door of the cab so the worker can get in safely. Remember, employers can sign up for occupational injury services, and if your worker utilizes one of these clinics, then you will have a return to work case conference with the provider, your worker, and yourself, where you'd be able to specifically inquire about climbing into the truck as a restriction. I think really at the end of the day, it is important to work with the adjudicator case manager. I wouldn't say that all doctors would be okay with an employer just reaching out to them to get further clarification. But certainly the Workers' Compensation Board can reach out to that physician and inquire further with the information that you provide into us with that physical demands analysis.
Okay, you crushed that one. So that is all we have for our question outreach. But Deb, I just wanted to give you the opportunity. Is there anything that you would like to add stemming from today?
Just truly to keep in mind that the WCB certainly wants to work with you. We certainly are very, very focused on a safe and early return to work for our workers. So modified work is super important. It does help with lowering your premiums. Safety is number one, but having that disability management and the modified duties is a very strong number two. Nobody needs to be paying more in WCB premiums, as well as keeping in mind that Leanne Mraz she takes the southern half of the province for trucking, as well as myself for the northern half. We're here as a resource. So definitely feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns, keeping in mind we don't make any claim decisions. But, the WCB can be a complicated system to understand when you're not living it every day. So that's our position here. And we love working with AMTA and the trucking industry.
The feeling is definitely mutual. I just wanted to thank you for sharing your knowledge and insight today. And for the folks out there, if you do have questions, you can work through us and we can get you into contact with Deb and Leanne. We'll have some information in the show notes, as we mentioned as well. And yeah, thank you so much, Deb. Let's do this again next year.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Take care. For our next segment, I'd like to remind you once more a trigger warning for instances of human trafficking, sexual assault, and bodily harm. We go now to a recent chat I had with Heather Fry, Director of Industry Training with TAT, or Truckers Against Trafficking as they were formerly called. Heather also presented at our annual conference this past April, and having personally worked with Heather and her team over the years, we are always so pleased to share word of what they do and help in any way we can to combat human trafficking. Heather, welcome.
Hi, Kelsey. Thanks for having me.
So let's start by telling us what exactly is the Harriet Tubman Award?
Yeah, the Harriet Tubman Award is a prestigious award that we give out each year. We've been doing it since 2013, and it's meant to honor a member of the transportation industry whose direct actions have led to a person who could potentially have become a victim of human trafficking or actually was a victim of human trafficking being recovered from that situation. So we're always looking to recognize heroic actions, and those heroic actions, simply could be making a phone call that has resulted in a victim being recovered. It comes with a $5,000 prize. I don't want to miss that. So yes, each year we give it out, and each person receives a $5,000 award.
Amazing. And do you have some stories that you can share of past recipients or the kind of nominations that have been submitted?
Yeah, definitely. There's one story that we like to talk a lot about at TAT because I think it highlights really well the what the crime of human trafficking actually looks like in North America. And so we talk about Kevin Kimmel, and he was the 2015 Harriet Tubman Award winner. And this happened in January of 2015. Kevin drove for Conway Truckload. He's now retired, but he was finishing up his deliveries, and he was stopping at a truck stop to take his break and complete paperwork. And he was noticing an RV that was parked in the truck area. What he noticed was a man going back and forth from the convenience store to the RV, and then multiple men arriving at the RV and then leaving a little while after. But when he saw a young woman try to stick her head out of the window and have it violently snapped back in, and then some sort of commotion ensue inside, he realized that potentially something wasn't right there. And so he decided to make a call to law enforcement. An officer came out, and the two occupants of the RV invited her in, and it was kind of a bizarre situation. They were overly friendly, asked her to sit down, offered her cookies. They said they were on vacation, but it didn't appear to be a normal family situation. And there was a third person in the RV, and it was a 20-year-old woman. She appeared to be frightened, looked very disheveled, and she was exhibiting signs of malnutrition. She was able to make eye contact with that officer and indicate with her eyes that things were not okay. And so that officer removed her from the RV and was able to start asking some questions. Immediately, that young woman began to weep and begged not to have to return to the RV. So what had happened about 18 days prior, she was lured from her home by the two individuals, Laura Sorensen and Aldair Hadza. And these were actual friends of her family that had lured her into captivity. She was being held against her will. She was being abused sexually by Hadza and physically abused by both of the suspects. They were threatening to kill or injure her family, and she couldn't remember the last time that she had been given food or water, and that it had been several days. So she was placed in an ambulance, and another investigator began talking with her, and she indicated that she had been branded on her back and inflicted with burns. They would use metal objects and heat them up over the RV stove, and she had burns all over her body. At one point, she was able to try to escape, but she was caught, and they lacerated her feet after that failed escape attempt. So she was really in bad condition. She also indicated that they had her texting her family back home periodically to indicate that everything was fine. So nobody was even looking for her. What was happening is that she was being sold for sex on Craigslist, and men would arrive at the RV to rape her. The doctors said that had the call not been made, that brought law enforcement out to the scene and ultimately gave her the opportunity to get to the hospital, she likely would have died in the next several days due to the infection and the severity of her wounds. So a simple phone call that Kevin Kimmel made resulted in this 20-year-old woman being afforded a life and a place back at home with her family. we talk about TATS training being, very easy and accessible. And our ask is simply that if you're seeing something, just to make a phone call. We never ask anybody to get involved. And Kevin Kimmel's heroic act of picking up the phone when something just felt off. He said he wasn't really sure what he was seeing, but he knew that something just didn't look right. And he's a hero because of it.
Absolutely. And had Kevin been aware of the TAT training, or just kind of it felt off, so he made a call?
He actually became TAT trained after the fact.
Oh, amazing.
So the next story I have is of one who was TAT trained, and because of our training, he did make a phone call. So Joe Aguayo, he's our 2023 Harriet Tubman Award winner. He drives for Winco Foods, and he was driving on a route that he is one of his normal routes. It's in a desolate area. It's a place that's known for its hot springs and its lack of cell phone service. That's how desolate it is. As he was driving, he noticed a young woman who had a shaved head and was wearing nothing but a beach towel wrapped around her naked body. She looked like she was in rough condition and in need of some help. He knew he didn't have cell phone service there, but he knew that 10 minutes down the road, there was a police call box. And I should say that he didn't stop because Winco Foods has a very explicit rule against unauthorized riders in the truck. So he was following his company's protocol. So when he got to the police call box, he reported what he had seen and the area that it was in. And then he decided to go on his way, knowing that he did all that he could do and trusting that law enforcement would take it from there. Fast forward several months, he was driving that same stretch of road when he had a weather-related accident. And the police officer that arrived on the scene just happened to be the same person that had responded to his call about the woman on the side of the road. So he was able to ask about that woman. What he reported was that it was a 27-year-old victim of human trafficking, of sex trafficking, and she had been drugged and was in really rough condition. That stretch of road, come to find out, has become or had become a dumping ground of sorts for victims. Indigenous women in particular, they had found a couple in recent times in that area. Traffickers thought that it was a place where people would be reluctant to stop, knowing that it was very remote and that a lot of people just maybe would be too afraid to stop or didn't want to deal with a potential problem. They didn't, maybe that person was just a drug addicted person and, was out there, doing whatever she was doing. But Joe had the perspective of that woman being a human being and potentially in need of some help because Winco Foods had recently, just weeks prior to that, trained all of their drivers using our free training. So she did get help in the hospital. And again, this was a situation where she was in such rough condition that the doctors reported that there was a chance she could have died had that call not been made. And she was able to get hooked up with survivor services and get help in the aftermath of her trafficking situation. So again, another heroic situation that was simply due to a phone call being made.
It's amazing. Like you see drivers like Joe and Mr. Kimmel, just they notice something, they've had the training or they haven't, it's off, and they make the call and some lives are saved. We know that drivers, they're on the road every day, they're seeing this. I think that's why kind of you guys are so strategically positioned to help out drivers with that training. Can you kind of elaborate on what some of the training is that you offer?
Yeah, so all of our training is free and can be completed in less than 30 minutes. We offer documentary style, industry specific training videos. So within the trucking realm, we have courses for over the road drivers, one for local drivers, and one for movers and in-home delivery personnel. And what we try to do is make it easy and accessible. So we want to connect with companies and deliver our training in a infrastructure that's already set up for existing training. We don't want anybody to have to recreate the wheel. And so what I do is I talk with, safety directors or whoever is the person responsible for implementing training. We find out exactly how that company does training, and we deliver our videos in a way that makes sense to them. For owner operators, our free training is available right from our website, which is tatnonprofit.org. So they can simply go on there, choose the course that they want to take, and in less than 30 minutes, be a certified trucker against trafficking.
Amazing. And back to the Harriet Tubman Award, can you share with us the important deadlines, how to nominate someone, all of that information?
Yes, so we are accepting nominations, and the deadline is the end of July. You can go to our website and find the nomination page. I believe we've got a pop-up menu, so you go to the home page, it'll pop up and lead you to the place where a nomination can be made.
Amazing. Thank you, Heather. And for our listeners, we're going to be sharing this information on our social media as well. So keep your eyes peeled. And then, Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. But is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think, we as individuals can really make a difference in the fight against human trafficking, regardless of if we're a truck driver or a bus driver, or if we work in an office, or just the general everyday person. We all have a role to play in ending human trafficking. And that can be done simply by just slowing down, looking around, and looking for red flags of human trafficking. And we have anti-human trafficking resources on our website that I hope people will go check out. Get yourself trained. We have a new corporate video, which would be appropriate for anybody that is a non-driving focused person. Go to our website, take the training, educate yourself on the red flags, and slow down, look around, and make a phone call if you think that you're seeing something. And this could be either to 911 if you think you're seeing an active crime in progress, or if you're not really sure and just want to report what you're seeing, you can also call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and that number is 833-900-1010.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll make sure to share that number in the show notes as well. And I can vouch for the TAT website, the resources. It's incredible. So Heather, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kelsey.
I'd like to thank both Deb and Heather for their time today. Let's catch up on some AMTA news. AMTA's Edmonton Golf Tournament, taking place next week at the Links at Spruce Grove, is sold out, but hopefully we will catch you next year. Also, keep an eye out for details coming soon on AMTA's Driver Appreciation Days, taking place September 8th to 17th. And finally, AMTA's latest campaign, Spring into Safety, looks at the transition from winter to spring and how that can affect how we drive, prepare to drive, and how we interact with other road users. Be sure to check out our June 6th episode where we explored that further, discussing impacts of wildlife strikes, sharing the road with motorcycles, and spring cleanup. Do you have any questions or comments about the Steering Change episodes? Reach out on our Instagram at AMTA_CA or LinkedIn and Facebook at Alberta Motor Transport Association. Stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AMTA's Steering Change podcast. The views expressed by guests of the Steering Change podcast are their own and may not reflect the views of AMTA, its hosts, or sponsors. Did you have a question that you would like answered on an upcoming episode of the Steering Change podcast? We want to hear from you. To submit a question to the Steering Change mailbag, hit up our DMs on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram with the hashtag Steering Change, and your question will be answered either live on the podcast or by one of our SMEs here at AMTA. We ask that you share this episode with those in your network that could benefit from what we discussed today, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified when future episodes are released. You can learn more about us and our mission by visiting www.amta.ca. Now get out there and have a safe day.